pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming tonight. We have a question and comment section regarding tonight's agenda only that will happen after the superintendent's report. We also have a public comment session at the end. We're going to move them both to the front. So if you would like to make any comments regarding anything tonight, we're going to do it after the superintendent's report. There's a sign-in sheet in the back. If you'd like to speak, if you could just sign your names on there and pass it around, we would appreciate it. We're going to start with the spelling bee winners. Mr. Ritchie.
Mr. Ricci there?
Mr. Ritchie is in the very back, but he is there.
There he is.
Around with the Spanish students.
Go to the back.
Don't go from this way.
He's coming back.
He's coming around. Hold on. He's on his way.
All right.
Sorry to let in all the cold, but
how's it going?
Welcome.
Yeah, we're trying the side door because it's a little too busy. So our kids are coming in a second. They're just getting settled outside in their lines. We're going to try to get them in here quickly. We know it's kind of cold outside. Last year, we doing that first? Oh, great, even better. Okay. So this year, we had our spelling bee again, our annual spelling bee, and we had two students that definitely kind of stood out amongst a tremendous competition. So we had Timothy Everowski and Franklin Heredia. So Timothy finished second as our runner-up in the competition, and Franklin beat him out. But when I tell you it was a back-and-forth battle, we had, I think, 6 or 7 rounds at the end that was just having to finish that challenge word.
11 rounds. So there were 7 rounds. We had
Even better.
We had 3 spellers who tied for 3rd place that got through 7 rounds. And then the boys battled through 11 more rounds, just the 2 of them. So I've never seen anything like that. It was truly amazing. And my favorite part was at the end when Franklin had the championship word. They just gave each other a big high five and a handshake, and that was truly, just to see their sportsmanship was the best part. So to go back and forth 11 rounds was just amazing. You could tell that they really worked hard. So we just want to congratulate them. We have a certificate for each of them. And then, we have a plaque with both of their names that will be hung in the library.
All right, Franklin, at the last Board of Ed meeting, I was challenged by trying to spell your word on the spot.
What was the word?
Let's see, it was contemplate. Let's see if you still got it. You remember?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
CONTEMPLATE.
Awesome.
How you doing?
Take a picture.
the kids are outside.
Oh, I did it already. I proved myself. Come on up.
Come on over here. Frankie.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Nice job. All right. And now, without further ado, so the most popular people in the room, clearly, we have 30 of our students, kindergarten through 5th grade. Last year, we put on a presentation to kind of give a little bit of information about what was going on with our kindergarten and 1st grade foreign language program at the elementary school, otherwise known as FLES. So right now we have expanded with the board support.
Hola, 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 H-O-L-A, H-O-L-A. Hola, 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 todo, la clase, ya está, cha-cha-cha, vamos a aprender y comprender. Gracias por venir y bienvenidos. What can we say to them? Buenas noches. Y gracias por venir. I'm so sorry. We're going to have tried to get my kids in order. So if you just give me an opportunity to get them in order. So my little ones, I know we spelled all that backwards, but that's okay. All right, Kayla, Gracie, come down. Zoe, Olivia, Allison, lo siento. Here, I see Ginny at that. Myla, full house. All right. Okay, I got it. Atrás. Hola y buenas noches y bienvenidos para venir aquí esta noche. I'm gonna have my kids over. I want them all to shine. So we have such a full house. We tried to practice this at school and did not expect so many people. So it's actually great. I'm really proud and I'm happy that you guys were able to bring your kids over here and obviously be a part of this opportunity. So the first thing that we're going to do is when that loads up, it would be great. We're going to sing our song while we're waiting. So let's sing Hola Amigos. Huh? Let me get these. In addition, I do have some of these that you should take one pass on that. Thank you very much. When this starts loading, you'll see that I will have, you guys as parents will have the opportunity to also download the Google Slides once this comes out. So, everyone, Hola amigos, y habladores soy. Vamos a cantar y hablar en español. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. All right, excelente. Next song is Gracias. Thank you so much. All right. So things didn't happen as they were, and that's kind of like how class is sometimes, right? You have to make modifications when needed. So parents, what I would like us to do right now, if you want, you have a smartphone, you can put it in the camera settings, and you can actually download the Google Slides so you can have your slide as well. So if you want to tap that out, just put your camera setting, and it should be able to download on your phone. I'll give you a second. Good? If for whatever reason this does not work, you can always email me and I'll be happy to also email you these Google Slides as well. Alright, I'm going to switch. Everyone's good? See? Listos?
Sí.
Okay. Alright. Table of contents. We did our Hola Hola song. We did our Hola Amigo song. We're going to do our Buenos Dias song right now. So, and if you are in my class, you can join as well. Because I wish I could bring everybody, but I couldn't. All right. Buenos días,
Buenos días, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias, muy bien, gracias. Y tú. Buenas tardes, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias, muy bien, gracias. Y tú.
Luna.
Buenas noches, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias, muy bien, gracias. Y tú.
some songs and I'm not going in complete order, but what we're going to do today is talk about why language is beneficial and how these students actually can demonstrate how language is beneficial. Learning a language is only, and learning anything, if you learn it in a real life situation, it's better than just learning it from a textbook. So that's kind of what we do. We do role play, we do music, we do a lot of repetition, and I'm going to show you with all of these different bullets what they can do, and it's kind of like real life situations. We also have pictures, and if time permits, we can also play games with guys, and we're going to sing our real. So we did sing these. This is an infographic, and I just wanted to let you know what we did. So in the beginning of the year, I gave the kids a learning style survey so that I can create a report with the kids so I can figure out what type of learner they are, because we are all different, we all learn differently. And this also helps me modify my lessons. We also discussed the reasons why language is beneficial. I know that it sounds simple, but sometimes we don't know why language is beneficial. So I actually asked the kids, there's a little hand in the corner, I've asked the kids, and this wasn't all my classes, but I did ask the upper grades, why is language important for you? And everybody has a different reason why language would be important to them. They gave me their own reasons for each figure. They have a reason for themselves. We see that it actually helps us better understand our native language. It's obviously good for money. It is gives us extra skills. It helps us appreciate art. It helps us with our career, self-improvement, traveling, communication, and studying. And I'm sorry that I'm giving you guys my back. And along with that, there is, we're doing the Ivy Program, the PYP, and there are character ed profiles that are embedded in my lessons. So the kids are learning how to be good citizens for the community. Okay? So throughout my lessons, you'll see these little cutouts, whether they are problem solvers, if they communicate, if they are caring, if they are they like to share ideas, or they're balanced, or they're reflective, or they're trying something new. You'll see those little clips on each of the slides that they're demonstrating something like that. Hi. So communication, each time we're going to just role play, and the kids are going to do little skits. Obviously, they are learning how to be proficient in the language. And in my class, I applaud mistakes. So if your child doesn't do something right, please applaud that. Because that is where we grow, that is where we become curious, and that's where we motivate ourselves and inspire ourselves to be inquirers. So just like kids, when we have our babies, right, they fall and we're like, yeah, you fell. Well, the same kind of idea, we stop doing that after a while. And I think that it's really important that our kids understand that it is okay to make mistakes. They're not fully proficient. And so when they are needing me, I will help them when needed. I will help them and prompt them or ask them questions to get them along. So our first actors are my lovely Kayla, my beautiful Lily, and my beautiful Brittany. Now, we, for kindergarten, all of us are learning the same thing, but of course on an age-appropriate level. So my kids in kindergarten learn basic conversation, but we read a book called Margaret and Margarita, and they're about two little girls who, they go to the park, and of course they need basic communication to be able to play with each other in the park. One speaks English, one speaks Spanish. And I know that sometimes we talk about real life situations and how our kids go to the park and they're bored and they want to play with another friend. They can't just grab their arm and tell them, let's play. They have to communicate and introduce themselves. So we're going to do this little skit right now. It is going to be, I'm sorry, I forgot my little, Jessica? No. It's just Brittany, Lily, and Kayla. Okay? So, I'm going to have a scooch over. Let's see if we can make a little spot space on the Let's try to come here. Want to come here? All right. So Lily, let me give you some scenario, a little background scenario. Lily is in the park and she is triste. Are you triste? Triste. Ay, la pobre está triste. And the reason why Lily is triste is because there's no one to play with her in the park. But yes, Brittany and Kayla come along in the park, and let's see what they do. You guys can begin. So clearly, basic communication is clearly really important for these kids so they can make friends, so they can be caring, so that if they see another child there, they can actually play with them and be able to communicate. Our next, and we see there are caring and there are problem solvers, right? She could have just left her not playing with her, and they obviously solved that problem and became friends. Amigas. All right. Clase, miren el calendario. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? We're getting ready for meeting match. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Vamos a contar. Cuenta conmigo. 1, 2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
Alright, usualmente hay 28 días, pero en febrero este año 2020 es, tiene los 29 días. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy, Colin?
Febrero 2020.
¿Qué piensas? ¿Necesitas ayuda? ¿Hoy es el 10? No, yo no creo que es el 10. ¿Qué piensas? Colin, mira, ¿qué día es hoy? In my class, we do something where if they need help, they can ask for ayuda, and their peers help them. So, ¿necesita ayuda?
12.
Ah, qué bien, el 12. ¿Qué tal las donas? 12, qué bien. ¿Y cuál es el mes? No, día no, mes. Es abril, febrero y el año.
2020.
Qué bien, 2020. Okay, so es el 12 de febrero de 2020. We do mini maestros in my class, which I give the opportunity to each student to be a mini teacher. So I do have mini teachers. They actually do this entire thing in the very beginning of class, but I'm splitting it amongst 3 people. So I'm splitting it between Olivia, Jackson, Olivia, and Zoe. So they're going to be my mini maestros today. Usually they just do all the questions, one person only. So they are going to begin. So who's the first question? Go ahead, Zoe.
¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Grace. Mi día es hoy. Mi escuela.
Bien.
¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Voy a hacer 12 de febrero de 2020.
Muy bien. ¿Qué tiempo hace hoy? ¿Hace buen tiempo, clase, o hace mal tiempo? ¿Qué piensan?
Hace buen tiempo.
¿Hace buen tiempo? ¿Qué piensan? Ustedes tenían frío afuera. You guys were cold outside. Are you sure? I don't know. Well, what would you say? Hace buen tiempo, yeah.
Hace más tiempo.
Oh, hace mal tiempo. What happens if we think it's in between? What do we say? ¿Qué podemos decir? Sí, Jenna. Así, así, right? We could say, está así, así, right? Un poquito mal, un poquito bien, así, así. La última pregunta. Jackson, hit it.
¿Cómo estás?
Now, when they are actually doing this part, I'm sorry. When they are doing this part, we have a PowerPoint, a smartboard, so we cross out the ones, and this is kind of me assessing them. They don't even know that I'm assessing them. I'm speaking. So we cross them out, and the kids are circling, so they have to listen and identify the feelings. And they are also, they can't repeat what's already said. So they have to kind of think about what's left. So I'm going to pretend this is my smart board right now, and the kids are going to say so. Did you say it, Jackson? Okay, who did you ask?
Vivian.
Okay. One down. Segunda. Ah, estás cansado. Yo también. Yo también. How many of us are cansado?
Everyone raise it.
Todos. I know. We're like, we have to speak stuff, right? All right. Jackson, le pregunta.
Yo estoy mal.
Ay, pobrecito, está mal, lo siento.
Yo estoy
Feliz. Como una lombriz. Qué bien.
Yo estoy
Así, así. Ok, qué bien. Hay 3 más. ¿Enferma de verdad? Ay, lo siento. Gracias por venir. 2 más. Sí.
Yo estoy
Well, that was a self-correction, right? What are you? Ay, lo siento, enamorado. Una más. Jackson. Ay, la pobrecita está triste. We did a good job. Yo estoy bien.
Yo estoy bien.
Yo estoy mal.
Yo estoy mal.
Yo estoy así, así.
Yo estoy así, así.
Yo estoy triste.
Yo estoy triste.
Yo estoy feliz.
Yo estoy feliz.
Yo estoy
enferma.
Yo estoy cansada.
Yo estoy cansada.
Yo estoy
enojado.
All right, good job, guys. Bien. All right, so we have another skit, and this is obviously we need languages because it can help us with our career. And we have some presenters today that are going to role play how it is to have a career and how to use basic conversation. So, who do we have? Where's my Addison? Doctora Addison, London, Reagan, and Jimmy. Por favor, step up. Okay. I know. Sorry, going back and forth. We have fun when we learn. Yeah, baby. ¿Necesitan? No? No? Okay. All right. Ready?
Hola, buenos días, Carmen. Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo estás, Carmen? ¿Por qué? Luego las perros. Lo siento. ¿Cuántos perros entramos? 5. ¿Cuántos perros? 1. Tengo mucho trabajo.
Pobrecita, she has a lot of work cut out for her, no? That's fue mucho trabajo, means. Pobrecita, doctora Addison. Vamos a darle un aplauso, por favor. All right. Yes, okay.
Because we're gonna play with the people, hopefully.
Alright, so second one. The next skit that we're going to do is talk about how traveling and studying abroad is really important. Obviously, they're going to need it. I traveled abroad when I was younger, and we did a lesson on it where we actually used our senses. It was a simulation, and we heard the airplane. We went on. I don't know if the kids, some of you went to Spain one day. I took them to Spain while we were in class, and They are going to pretend that they are reading their whole family, and of course they also need basic communication for that. They don't want to go off with a stranger. We talked about how it's not good to go with a stranger. So I'm going to need Kayla, Brian, Brenton, and Grace for this next act. Do you guys need your makeup?
Maybe.
You guys can probably not Now, whether they look at this here or not, I do want you to understand that this is in Spanish, and there are visuals that help them, but it's amazing that they are reading in Spanish as well. Nadie más? Okay. You good? All right. Ready? Set go.
Hola. Hola. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Grace. Me llamo Brendan. ¿Cómo te llamas? Me llamo Kayla. Me llamo Ryan. Mucho gusto. ¿Cómo estás?
Get along right.
Mamá es en casa, mi casa es tu casa.
Okay, wow, muy bien, gracias. Un aplauso. Gracias. So the next thing that we're going to do is my kids we do the lesson where we talked about self-improvement. It's really important that we're good citizens, but that we're taking care of ourselves as human beings. And we did something where we had to group up, read infographs in complete Spanish. There was nothing. There was no English. And they had to figure out, look for cognates, which are words that are similar to English, which they did. And they also learned a few words because they made connections and they learned new words, English words, in Spanish. So they made some public service announcements. After this lesson, they actually made some public service announcements. And now they're in school. They're near the nurse's office. Inside the nurse's office, in front of the nurse's office, and in the lunchroom. And it basically tells us to eat a rainbow. And of course, not Skittles. They have to eat a rainbow of like what is healthy. So if they eat bread, there is a benefit. It helps your heart, your circulation. So the kids are going to give you a public service announcement because they are public service announcers, and they are going to read this in Spanish. So, rojo, naranjado. You guys can come on. Morado, verde. It's verde. Oh, here you go. Amarillo. Okay, and blanco. Olive. Alright, so they are going to read these public service announcements to you. Here's a tiny little bit. Okay, alright. Ready? I want you all to show it like. Alex, primero.
Comer rojo es bueno para la salud del corazón.
Yeah, red is good for your heart.
Comer verde es bueno para la salud del estómago.
Muy bien, Kira. Gracias. Okay, Kira took the thing to someone. Couldn't be here and it's totally missed. So she is reading this for the first time, so good job, Kira.
Comer blanco es bueno para la salud de los huesos.
Bien.
Comer morado es bueno para la salud y el sistema inmune.
Sistema inmune, immune system. Qué bien, gracias, Martín.
Comer amarillo es bueno para la salud de los ojos.
Muy bien, gracias, Milo. Analia.
Comer anaranjado es bueno para la salud de los músculos.
Bien, perfecto. Yes, we're going to see. All right, so, I know that you guys I think it's psychology at that way. Appreciating art and music. We do have one last one, but before we start with this, we're just appreciating art and music. So if you go to the, I kind of started this lesson with saying like a lot of them like the song, it's not popular anymore, but they used to like Despacito. So all of them saying Despacito. And they didn't really know the words. So if we want to appreciate music and art, we need to know what we're talking about. So I have Valeria, and I have Jude, and I have Jenna, and I have Jared to come to a museum. So come up front. But first we're going to sing our song. So red is rojo, blue is azul, yellow's amarillo, verde, green, black is negro, blanco is white, purple is morado, brown cafe, pink is rosa, grease is gray, anaranjado's orange, shout hooray, hooray, shout hooray, hooray. All right, Valeria. They are in a museum and they're going to be appreciating art. We know we learned our colors, but we also learned about art. So, take it away. So we're pretending now they're in the museum. Wow, we got here so fast. Okay. Yo veo verde.
Yo veo rojo.
Yo veo negro.
Mi color es rojo.
Mi favorite color es blanco.
What is
Negro.
Clase. ¿Quién es el artista? Juan Miro. ¿Y qué tipo de arte dibujas? ¿Regular o qué? ¿Qué tipo de arte? Ah, qué bien, arte abstracto. Qué bien. And I'm going to use Ryan. There was a quote that he said that. And he said that, and I love it. He said that no es el lápiz, no es donde lleva el lápiz, es donde el lápiz te lleva a usted. And that means it's not where the pencil, it's not where you take the pencil, but where the pencil takes you, and that's what makes art abstract. So good job, Ryan, with that. And we also talked about culture, so when it's time to, like for Christmas, we talked about las posadas with Mexican culture, and la piñata, and the different meanings that they have. So we are obviously being open-minded, de mentalidad abierta, and we are learning things and being very good pensadores and communicators. Okay, so the ways that we learn. The ways that we learn are so many different ways because we learn in so many different ways. We have some, I wish I could zoom into each one, but I don't. I can't. We learned about Mayans for the 5th grade, so I do align it with the topics that they are doing in their grade level. The 5th graders did Mesoamerican, so we talked about Mayan numbers, and they were able to count their numbers in Spanish, but with Mayan numbers. We use manipulative, so we actually use little strings and circles to create those numbers. We play games. We do a lot of repetition. We go in stations. We actually turn and talk. We also, for Christmas time, we created a calendar for each other. We gave it as a gift so we could practice our numbers interactively. We also did, for 4th and 5th grade, we pretended to be in a indigenous Mayan, and then we were counting our crop, and we actually made some quibus. So we did that, and for Halloween, or Dia de los Muertos rather, actually, we did Dia de los Muertos, and we made some masks, and we have some pictures there of mini maestros. I know you can't see that, but there goes Colin with his Mayan mask. And we do use like WL charts, so they tell me what they know, what they've learned, and what they want to learn. And that's my kindergarten class talking about using spontaneous conversation with art as well. They learned about Pablo Picasso. These are our public service announcements. So throughout the school, if you see and you walk in the hallways and you see a QR code, please don't hesitate to take out your phone and scan it. That is the kids. They are, whatever the kids did right here, where they said, come rojo es bueno para el corazón, you can walk in the hallway and scan your phone and hear your kids talking and creating those public service announcements. So it's absolutely cool how they're using technology and being good citizens. And lastly, I know you guys are going to kill me because you want to get out of here and it gets us past the bedtime, I get it. But we want to play a game with you guys. So we are going to take this potato and we're going to take it, we're going to toss it to the audience. This way, this way, guys. This way, okay. So, we're going to show you while we're playing, and you, wherever it lands, you guys are going to have to try to do it too, okay? This is part of our game. We've done this in class. This is how they learn. Alright, so the kids are going to show you. ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas tú?
What?
Mi nombre es Jenna.
Oh, Jenna, mucho gusto. ¿Qué tal? Ok, vamos a pasarlo allí. ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas tú?
Wow, qué bien, perfecto. I wish I had my stickers. This way. ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas tú?
Hola, Alexis. ¿Qué tal? Back there. ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas tú?
Mrs. Craig.
Hola, Mrs. Craig. ¿Qué tal? All right, guys. So, thank you so much for coming here, guys. And God bless you.
Adiós, amigos, adiós, amigos, adiós. Adiós, amigos, adiós. Y nos vemos pronto. Adiós, amigos, adiós, amigos, adiós.
Just to let you know, I do see some of my other students here, and I wish that I could bring everybody up here, but clearly I teach this high school, and we would really be tight here. So thank you so much for parents for participating and supporting this program. I do appreciate it. Thank you for the students that tried really hard. I can only imagine how they're going to be if this program starts from kindergarten to fifth grade. So gracias para el apoyo. Adiós.
Yeah, you'll be playing games.
It is.
Thank you
All right, now we're going to go ahead and go with the questions and comments regarding tonight's agenda only, or if you also have questions or comments regarding anything, if you could just sign in the back and keep your comments to 3 minutes so as many people can speak as possible, we appreciate it. Mr. O'Brien?
Good evening. My name is Chris O'Brien. I'm a 36-year member of the district as an employee, as a coach, and a teacher. And I was very shocked to see when the agenda and the coaching application came out for the assistants for the high school track team. We have two very capable members that have served in that capacity for a number of years. And I don't want, it seems like sometimes decisions are based on personal vendettas from some community members, whether or not their child is getting proper playing time or coaching philosophies. And I know that when I saw that, I spoke to Mr. Thode. He said that he had recommended these two individuals, Jessica Tank for the boys' position and Sarah Kaiser for the girls' position. And they were not on the minutes or the agenda for the meeting. So, you know, I was very displeased to see that because as a personal, I'm on the track with them in the spring. I see them doing a fantastic job. And I think it's a disservice to our student athletes, many of them are here tonight, that their appointments were not on the agenda for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, we appreciate it. Helena Roy?
Dear Board of Education, it has come to my attention that Mrs. Kaiser will be denied the role of girls varsity spring track assistant coach. I have been running in our school's cross-country and track program for going on 4 years, with Ms. Kaiser being my coach for 7 seasons of winter and spring track. Mrs. Kaiser has been the only consistent coach in our school's running program. Since 2016, I have had 5 different coaches train me and my teammates. Coach Kaiser has spent countless hours training herself in the different track events so she could be a successful coach to her team. What is most important that Ms. Kaiser has taught me and my teammates has been giving back to the community and teamwork. For my years being Ms. Kaiser's athlete, we have participated in community service projects, collecting toys for children in our community, and collected and sorted food for Thanksgiving food drives. Coach Kaiser makes a constant effort to help every member of the team feel included and important. She's also very good at recruiting athletes and getting kids involved in Center North's athletics. She has made an unbelievable impact on the kids she coaches, teaching them valuable lessons on and off the track. It is for the best interest of the track athletes to keep Coach Kaiser as our assistant coach. Thank you.
Anthony Parlato?
My name is Anthony Parlato, and I'm the president of MYO. And I really don't have that much to say, except I want to endorse what Chris is saying. Probably the hardest job of any administrator is making true evaluations. And what I mean by that, when you evaluate somebody, whether it's an educator or a coach, not everybody is in the top 10 percentile. There are plenty of people that don't fit in that category. But it seems administrators are uncomfortable putting their people online and say, hey, you're not good at this, you didn't do this well, we need you to improve. It's a very difficult part of an administrator's job. And they have to, I think they have to handle it a little bit better. Thank you, Chris, for what you said.
Thank you, Mr.
Acquainted don't back. I would say in my language, I said cuatro tasseries or me llamo Enrique. I'm here because I wasn't able to make it here last January's meeting. I want to thank the board for approving the Untitled Language Club. So I wanted to say personally thank you for that, and to extend to you that it was a hard work contract, and we plan on starting that club in March. I'm very excited about that. Students are excited, teachers are excited, I'm excited, everybody's excited. We won't take up that kind of time we did before, but I know we'll have a presentation for you guys, you're gonna love it. The second thing I'm here for is because I've been told to come here by members of my community, and I do what I'm told, and that is to support the assistant coach, Sarah Sullivan. I understand she's gotten better. I don't personally know, but I know members of my community have had their children coached by her. They've had very good evaluations. She's had very good evaluations. So I want us to be able to support that. I know superintendents support it. I think the parents are supportive. I think the board should support it as well. So again, thank you for the club. We worked hard on the contract, and thank you for supporting the candidate. I know you will be able to do the right thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the end of the list. Is there anybody else?
I'd like to speak on Sarah Sullivan's behalf. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Riley Donegan. I started running for the Center Ranches cross country team in 7th grade, and I finished off my senior year, and I continued running at the University of Tampa. I got to meet Coach Sullivan my junior year. I was so happy for that. I got to see my team improve in ways just beyond times and county championships. Coach Sully was always at the track with a smile on her face, and practice wasn't practice. It was a place where we could all grow as students, as athletes, and it was a safe place for all of us. I have a lot of things for him, but I'll keep it short. I just want to say one thing about Sully is one of the most vital qualities about her is how she handled a loss, or if you didn't perform well. I think it's really important for a coach to focus more on the bad things that happen and see how to make it into a good thing. And Sully was always a really positive coach, and she's a big influence in my life. I met her when I was 17 years old, and I'm 22 years old now, so that should say a lot. And I think I can credit her for a lot of the success I had in my high school career. So hopefully that changes some minds.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to speak. I'm Denise Kleiman, my daughter is Delaney Kleiman, and my son is Jack Kleiman. I came in support of Sully, but finding out that Jessica Tank wasn't also approved. My son ran track this winter. He would not have run. She would not be coached. And that's the end of it. He would not have. She got him to like the sport. She got him to see the value of it, and to see that you're not having her back, given her contribution to this community. Her family's contribution to this community is astounding to me. And Sully has just made my daughter a track star that she wouldn't have been without her. So some of your decisions are really disappointing. I'd like to see you change.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We truly do appreciate you coming out and speaking to us tonight. We do value everybody's input, so thank you very much for that. We're going to go on now to the budget workshop.
Did you know? It was almost to me.
Let's go to the budget workshop.
And then we'll go to executive.
Thank you, Karen.
So tonight is our second budget workshop. Our first one was just a few weeks ago in January, where we went over kind of some broad overview of where we currently stand in 1920 and where the process is for the new year 2020-2021 school year. So tonight's agenda, we're going to give an update from last meeting on fund balance, where we stand in this current school year. We're going to get into a little bit more on the revenue and expenditure projections for the 2020-2021 school year, and also talk a little bit about long-term planning. So this is an update on where we were last time back in January. As of January 31st, we've updated our numbers. The numbers that were presented in January were as of December. Since then, we have had some changes occur within our expenditures and revenues, and we're able to tighten up these numbers a little bit more. We do have some part-time positions that we're not backfilling in order to try to close our gap and not deficit spend. We also noticed some expenditures that we have been carrying on the general fund that can be allocated to other programs, such as our federal program and cafeteria program, to help alleviate the burden on the taxpayers. The projections right now are very conservative. They are highly conservative because we still have 5 months left in the school year to get through, and a lot of things can change. We still have a lot of unknowns at this point in time as far as what our revenues could be by the end of this school year, as well as some expenditures. But we are monitoring these numbers closely. We are updating the fund balance almost on a weekly basis. Every time we do an accounts payable run or change payroll, we're updating all this information. What you can see here, though, is we have expenditure savings of 1.5 million. So we're underspending our budget, the expenses that was approved by the community, by 1.5 million. Our revenue, though, is a shortfall. We have about over $500,000 short in revenue, and that is primarily due to tuition revenue. Our rates for the East Merchant children attending our school came from the state, and they came in lower than what we had thought they would be. We had anticipated a lower rate, but they actually came in lower than that. Our enrollment has declined slightly, as well as our special education program. We have seen a loss of some children that were attending our school from other school districts, and those children had other placements take place. They moved, different needs that we could not fulfill. So as a result of all of that combined, our revenue is down. However, you do see, if you take those two numbers, the surplus on the budget is $995,000. What's not occurring is, if you recall, we have 1.1 million of applied fund balance into this year, into the budget, which is using our savings to help pay for the budget to alleviate the burden on the taxpayers. If you recall over board goal discussions, it is our goal to reduce that particular applied fund balance because you don't want to be using your savings to pay for expenses. So the conversation can go a few ways. We are not touching the 1.1 million, but what we're anticipating happening is we won't meet that maximum 4% allowed in the undesignated fund balance. So you're allowed 4% of your following year's budget every year, and we have been maximizing that 4%, but we anticipate, due to the revenue shortfall, that we may not meet that number. Again, we're monitoring it, watching it closely. We don't know what next year's budget is either at this point in time, so it's hard to say if we're going to be there or not. And if we're not, how far off we might be, because we don't know what our adopted budget is for the following school year to tell us what that 4% should be.
Do we have actions, like specific actions? Like I note that 1489, in each of the last 3 years, we've underspent by significantly more than that. You know, meaning that either we were more careful or the spending was shut off earlier. Do we have actions that we could take now? I know you kind of said some, but to take that 1489 to 16, which we underspent by 1650 last year, 19 the year before, so that we don't have this deficit. Things we can do now.
So those are things that Dr. Massera and I and the administrative team are looking at. We met after the last board meeting. We have another meeting tomorrow where we'll be updating the administrative team on budget, where we stand fund balance projections, to have those conversations. So we're tightening the controls on our expenditures. Any equipment that hasn't been purchased at this point in time, we are not allowing to be purchased.
So what is that? Is that in the 1489 though, or will that?
That all that is not just yet in the 1489, because we do have to be on the conservative side that should some of our maintenance equipment fail, we need to go ahead and spend that money. So there's some leniency to go back and forth on this. We also have some other funds that we're looking at to see if we can allocate other expenditures over to the other programs, such as the cafeteria program or the federal. The other thing is this year in the budget, we don't have any contingencies. In years past, there were contingencies built into the budget in order to meet the tax cap and stay within our revenues, as well as reduce applied fund balance. We do not have the contingencies that we're seeing in prior years built into this current school year's budget. Unfortunately, the hit to the revenue side, which was very unexpected, we've not seen such a large hit in the tuition. To lose, it was a net of 4 kids we lost and we gained 2. 6 children moved out of district from the time April occurred when we adopted budget until some moved around in the middle of fall. So to lose that many children out of our tuition program is not common. We've not seen that many. We have had the children coming and going. Like I said, it was 6 that were lost, but we gained 2 more. So those are things that we're looking at closely. The numbers are changing on an every day. This week I have my staff looking at, as we're preparing for our interim audit, they're looking at all the open purchase orders right now to see if there's any other monies that are to be pulled off of those POs because they're not going to be spent. And again, it's watching those numbers. We're not looking to cut staff mid-year, but we're looking to just tighten the controls in all other spending areas as we can.
So you had said the note that the loss of the tuition enrollment was a $395,000. Declining EMO tuition was $395,000 of that 563, and that's 4 kids.
No, that's different. So the EMO is because of the tuition rate. So we did lose a few children from East Moriches, but the rate declined from what we had anticipated. The loss of
Seneca
tuition
Falls number
correct.
changed.
Yes. The Seneca
We
Falls
didn't
rate
know
that
that?
came from the state. We just received the rate back in late January, and it came in significantly less. When I was preparing the budget, when I was preparing the 1920 budget, you may recall we had some conversations about that rate. Last year it was a very high rate, but it was a spike in the rate. I didn't trust that number, so I had budgeted much lower. I actually budgeted the 17-18 rate, anticipating it to be back aligned with where it has been in years past. It actually came in less than that. We're still waiting on the Native American tuition rate. We haven't received that yet from the state. I'm told I should have it hopefully by the end of this week to see what's going on with that number as well, if it's a decline and following suit of the other regular tuition rate that Seneca Falls derives. It is a similar formula, but there are some differences in that formula, so we're waiting on that number as well.
And what's the reason for the rate change?
It could be numerous things. So my understanding, because I am trying to divulge into that formula to see what happened and how do we kind of keep it at a steady pace. I guess back in, I think it was 17, 18, correct me if I'm wrong, from those that have been here longer than I, we had a few retirees occur. And as a result of those retirees, you have a lesser salary, so you're replacing them with a lesser salary, and the Seneca Falls is driven mostly off of your salaries and benefit lines.
So it's not that the Seneca Falls rate change, it's that our cost base
Our costs are
has
changing,
changed.
correct. As
So when you apply
we're seeing cost savings, we're doing our best for shared services and to develop the various cost savings measures that affects the Seneca Falls tuition rate in turn. Make sense?
Yeah.
Carry the light up there. Sorry, increase in reserve. Which reserve is that? The bottom. We've got increase in reserve, 155.
That's the debt service. If you recall, when we
Right.
closed out the bonds, we had to put money over into the reserve for the premium.
Jerry, quick question. When do we have the numbers from East Moriches that are coming next year? Do we?
We'll get into that.
No.
Yep. Jumping ahead. So moving on to now 2020-2021 budget. Everything we have right now is as of February 7th. When this presentation was prepared, again, we're continuing to update this information as it's coming in. We're looking at it every day. The administrative team is meeting constantly and looking at their budgets and staffing so that we can be sure to lock in this number quickly. So just a reminder, the budget goals that the board has adopted is to stay within the tax cap every year, not go over it. Budget to budget increase should be no more than 2%. To reduce our applied fund balance by $100,000 for the next few years so we can get to $800,000. We're currently at $1.1 million. maintain all of our current programs, as well as maintain the current fiscal stress of no designation from the Comptroller's Office. So this is just where we stand right now for projected revenues next year. What you can see from this slide is more than half of our revenue is coming from the property taxpayers, unfortunately. We are relying on you as a community to help support all of our programs. Our state aid is just less than 30% of the revenue that we receive, despite the fact that our Commonwealth ratio has declined. We're not seeing nearly enough aid that we should be. If you look, and I know Dr. Massara and I were working on some analysis to show to the board and the community what that all looks like as we compare to districts of similar wealth and similar size, to kind of determine and hopefully advocate for a little bit more aid when the runs come out in April. The other local revenue, like I just spoke of, is mostly the tuition. We have some miscellaneous revenues that we do receive as far as interest on our monies that we're earning, student fees, building use fees, those type of things. So the property tax limit, as we all know, there is a 2% tax cap, but it's important to note 2% is not 2%. It's developed with a formula that the Comptroller's Office provides to us. We go onto a portal, put in our information as requested, and it tells us what our tax levy should be. So the factors that go into that are the tax-based growth factor. That's the measure of the growing community, how much construction is going on in your community, which will tell you that is the maximum amount your levy is going to be able to go up. The allowable growth factor is the lesser of CPI, or 2%. And our capital exclusions, which is any of our current debt, less any building aid we're getting from the state. And now, 3 years back, they approved 2020 BOCE's capital exclusions. For 2021, they've finally figured out how to do it to an extent. We are waiting for further information to what that number is. They haven't yet told BOCE's how to calculate it. So that's the only unknown right now in our tax cap formula to develop where we're going to stand with what our levy maximum is. So what is the formula? Just to note, last year our tax-based growth factor, that's the TBGF, decreased from a 1.6 to a 0.36. So that's a significant decline, and that's primarily due to no new construction going on. The 1.16, I believe, was due to the Heatherwood community that was built. That came on the tax rolls, so we did see a significant decline in the tax-based growth factor. CPI is not 2%, it's 1.81%, and that's year to year for the 2019 fiscal year. So the top half of the formula takes what did we actually levy this year, times that by the tax-based growth factor, add in any pilots, we don't receive any, and then we take out our prior year exemptions, which was debt service less building aid that we're getting in the current school year. Then the next step of that is multiply that adjusted levy by what CPI is, which is the 1.81%, to come up with what our tax levy limit could be. From that, we calculate what our capital exclusion is. So for the current school year, we take our principal and interest for the debt payments that we have, we deduct out the building aid that we're going to receive from the state to come up with a $992,000 capital exclusion. So you can see we just take that number, add it back into the levy to come up with the levy limit of $24,304,000. This is a 1.652% increase over current year's levy, which is about just under $400,000. Again, the only piece that is not known right now, where you can see, the pointer doesn't work, the BOCE's capital expense is blank, as well as BOCE's facilities aid on the capital exclusion side. That is because we don't know that yet. As of yesterday, a meeting I was at yesterday, BOCE's is working on it because this calculation is due to the comptroller on March 1st. And they're waiting on guidance from the state. We're told the guidance is sitting on the director's desk and they're just waiting for that to come through. So as soon as we have that, we'll be sure to update it and give that information at the next board meeting.
The capital exclusion, Carrie, the interest on our capital, it seems fairly high. Is that on?
That's on all debt.
That's on all debt, but does it include the part that we're being reimbursed for by the state? In other words, are we borrowing everything to pay for the project and getting reimbursed after we pay the interest on that?
Correct. We pay for everything and we get reimbursed. So we're paying $2.8 million total, but we're getting back $1.8 million.
Right. And what is the interest paid on? The 2.8 or the 0.9?
I'm not following.
So we borrow 2.8 million, right?
We have 2.3 million in debt.
2.3.
Right,
So
and $500,000 in interest payments.
on that 2.3?
Correct.
Okay, so we're paying interest on money that we're getting reimbursed for, basically.
Yes.
Do we get reimbursed for that interest?
No.
So
No.
What rate do we get on typically on
67% unless we get the additional 10%, which most of our projects qualify for, except for the energy performance contract that we're still carrying on the books from a few years back, so that does not get the extra 10%.
So we're paying roughly triple the tax, triple the interest that you would pay. Okay, and what does that work out to for an interest rate?
The new borrowing we just did came in under 2%, the one we just did in August. I'd have to look at the bonds that we're carrying from years prior to see what their rates were. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I can get that for you.
And then when we have a bond that goes off the books that's closed out, so we have that step, we lose the capital exclusion for that
Yes.
in a given year,
Yes.
but we still have the prior year exemption.
Correct.
So we lose a big chunk of aid then.
Correct.
If the community approves the capital reserve, is there anything that prevents us from using the contributions that we put into that capital reserve year over year, adjusting those numbers to try to compensate some of the loss of aid? So in a year when we lose aid, can we put less into the capital reserve fund so that we don't have to cut into the program?
We could, if we were going out with a capital reserve resolution.
Right.
My understanding, and just some preliminary conversations we had, it would only be funded with any surplus. We would not add it to the budget as a budget line item because we don't want to affect the program at all. So it would be at the end of the school year when we close out the books, should we have any surplus, it would be funding the reserve at that point in time.
Got it.
Okay?
Can you just one more time, because that wasn't crystal clear. The 2.3 in principal that we have, debt or bonds,
Yes.
right? How does that, and the 505,000 that you have for interest, that's interest for, not just for that 2.3.
That's interest on, we have 3 current bonds that are outstanding as well as an energy performance contract lease.
So it's interest on
4
four,
projects.
but the 2.3 that you exclude doesn't cover the energy performance, presumably, correct?
The 2.3 is the energy performance from a few years back. It's in that number.
So the interest is on the 2.3?
On, right, all the debt that we have, we're paying an interest payment for all debt from all bonds.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
It's just crazy that we're paying for money that we're getting back, right? We're paying interest on money that we're getting reimbursed from the state.
You good?
Why is it, I mean, and maybe this is what Marcus is saying, I'm just not tracking. Why is the 505 on, it's a 2.3 million of principal and interest at 505? It seems like it's an enormous percentage. What am I missing? Right, isn't that like 20%?
I'd have to look at what the rates are from the prior.
That's your question, right? I don't understand it.
My question is, why is it so big? But we're paying triple the interest.
It's so big because it's not truly 2.3 principal. You're saying it's truly 7 million principal?
I don't know, is that right?
Say that again?
So if you look at this, this is 2.3 in principal.
Yep.
And we're paying 5.5 in interest.
We're borrowing the total cost of our capital project, not our contribution.
We borrow the total cost of the project, correct. And then we get aid back on the project as we file the cost report. So we've been receiving aid on some of those projects. We just filed the final reports a few months back. So aid is this year flowing now for all projects on the last bond.
This is it. It's the total amount. It's not 2.3. The total amount that we owe is 11.
Right,
The
this
5
is
million.
just the
That's just for the 1 year's payment.
Yeah,
That's just 1 year's of payment, yes.
Yeah, okay. I got it.
So moving on to state aid, as I mentioned before, we don't receive much. We're just under 30% of our revenue is coming from that. So in January, the governor releases preliminary runs for us. And we did receive them a few years back. You may recall he did not release them. We were fortunate to get them. However, he has kind of moved the numbers around, and we'll get to that in a minute. He wants to consolidate all the expense-based aids into foundation aid. So I don't know if also you're aware, foundation aid is what all of our organizations are supporting to have the formula run. We're losing money as a result of that not running. It's based on enrollment. And when enrollments are increasing, at a time a few years back, we were seeing significant increases. Our foundation aid was not increasing with that at the same time. So the year-to-year increase on the governor's proposal from his proposal to the proposal now is $360,000. It's primarily related to foundation aid. If you look at the foundation aid formula and all the money that we've lost since it's been frozen, we are underfunded in foundation aid by $3.6 million. So for this current school year, we should be getting another $3.6 million. We're not. The cumulative amount is $39 million.
With this 3.6, it's total 41.
So our budget, keep in mind, right now is $44 million. $41 million has not been received in foundation in the past 9 years or so. So it's something that we're advocating for to try to at least get some of that money back. We know we will not see it all, but let the formula run so that the districts that need it and to relieve the tax burden for the payers in the community is to start getting that foundation aid flowing. So the building aid estimates on the governor's run are actually for our district, and most districts are not accurate. It's as of a database that was pulled in November. We filed some cost reports in December, which have been approved and are processing through the state. So our building aid number that is on his proposal will be different based on what we know our actual aid will be. In addition, there's a new aid category that we're receiving. It's called Community School Set Aside. This has about 3 or 4 districts on Long Island have been receiving it. There's a handful within the whole state. I would say now more than half districts statewide are getting it this year. The number from what we're told is changing either because your free and reduced lunch numbers or your ELL numbers are increasing. So this is to help support those programs. We're still learning what this does, how does this work, where is the funding, what can we allocate it to. That guidance is forthcoming. So hopefully in March we can talk a little bit more about that. I have a meeting end of February, a training where they will be going over this a little bit more as this is new to most schools on Long Island.
It is reimbursable too, so it's not just flat aid.
So it's kind of like, we believe it to be similar to the UPK program. You have to spend the money in order to get the money back. We will have to file some federal reports and tracking, and so it's about $52,000, which, so it's not a significant amount of money, but there's a lot you can do with $52,000. So this is just a summary of the aid proposal. It's available on New York State Education's website. Anybody can go take a look at it. So you can see what he did here is where you see all the zeros in 2020, 2021, he rolled up all of those aids, which are expense driven. So as we spend money at BOCES, we get aid back. Our high tax aid, our hardware and technology aid, software and library, textbooks, all of that, we used to get a certain amount back on what we spent. He's looking to eliminate that, roll it all up into foundation aid. So that's why you're seeing a $1.7 million increase in foundation aid. But when you break it down into realistic terms, which we do have, our organizations have done for us, we are not seeing a $1.7 million increase in foundation aid. We're actually only seeing about a $360,000 increase in foundation aid. So you can see high cost excess aid and private excess cost aid. Those are just numbers that are driven based on our students with special needs and the expenditures we incur as a result. We do get funded back from the state, a certain percent of that. Transportation aid, that's basically off of our actual transportation expenses that we're seeing. And again, building aid, like I said, is low. It's 1.6 million. We're actually anticipating about 1.8 million. So that should be coming in the April run to verify that that number that we have projected and have had audited should be accurate. So another source of revenue could be reserves. So this is just kind of a, hey, let's think about this as we're starting to go through the budget process and enter into, how do we balance a budget? What are we doing next year? The board's goal is to reduce the 1.1 million to 1 million from our applied fund balance. Another option is our employee retirement reserve. The annual expense that we usually pay each year is around just over $700,000. We have over 1 million in the reserve. We may need to pull from that, we may not. We may want to allocate only a couple $100,000 to the budget to help offset that expense. And again, unemployment reserve. We have about $150,000 sitting in that reserve. Our unemployment expenses are very low, which is why I wouldn't recommend going higher than $20,000 because that's all we have in the budget for it, as we don't tend to lay people off or experience high unemployment.
Karen, the applied fund balance, I know I've asked this before, I'll get it eventually. So we came in with 1.1 million that we applied this year.
Correct.
At the end of this year, what did we plan previously to go out to apply for next year?
1 million.
So 100,000 was planned to be spent that way.
100,000 was planned to be moved from one bucket to the 4% bucket. It just moves columns. So that 100,000 becomes revenue this year.
Yep.
So tuition, as I stated before, we are seeing some variations in this. So East Mauritius, Mr. Kelly, to your point, we currently have 75 students enrolled in our district from East Mauritius. The projected enrollment, preliminary numbers we have received from there is 66 students. They do have a lower class size this year. It is much less than we've typically gotten in the past. So they have until, I believe it was March 1st, to make a final commitment. So in March, we will give updated numbers when we have that. But this is just preliminary information that we received as of last week.
How much of that 9 difference is because we have a smaller 9th grade class coming in versus the outgoing class? You know what I mean? So that's the whole district. That's obviously not, do you know?
We did run those numbers. We looked at it. It was
9 less.
Yeah, it was.
So we actually have 9 less coming into 8th grade?
No,
9th grade?
I mean, I thought we could have more coming into.
I think it was 9 or 10 less than what was graduating versus coming in. Well, I know we did look at.
Well, that's exactly what was less, graduating versus coming in.
Right.
What you're asking is between the 10th grade class and the 9th grade class.
Yeah.
I don't remember offhand what that number was,
Right.
the difference. But this is one of our lowest.
I mean, do we think it's just because their class is small coming in, or we're getting less of a percentage for some reason?
Tough to say unless we, fall in for, reasonable choice or something like that. I can't really answer that.
So that loss of students with the tuition rate declining is equaling a loss of revenue, just as we're experiencing this year. We know that for going into next year, so we will be adjusting the budget accordingly on the revenue side. Our Native American tuition, K-12, currently we have 81 students. Projected as of, I think, last week's conversation was 82.
Even if the enrollment number were the same, because of the projected less of the rate, it still would have been less, even if the number were
Correct.
still 70.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I'm understanding.
You are correct. Yep. So for Native American, they do follow, like I said before, the Seneca Falls formula that the state compiles based on our expenditures. It has not yet been released. I've been bugging our friends up there on a daily now basis, and I am told that I should have it by Friday. So again, that number will be updated in March at that presentation. Special education tuition, as I stated before, we bill out on the actual cost of program. We don't use the Seneca Falls formula for those students because it is a high cost program. Currently, we have 18 students enrolled. In 1920, when we prepared this year's budget, we had 22. So that's where you can see the difference. So we again have a loss of revenue on that side going into next year that we already know. So flipping over to the expenditure side, we have to have a balanced budget. So in the past, we used to develop a expense-based budget and then come up with what our revenues are going to be, and being that the tax levy would be the last calculation that we do. Things have changed since the tax cap law was put in place. We now develop the tax cap levy to see what that is, kind of look at all of our other revenues and say, okay, here's how much we can have in our expenses in order to develop our budget. Keeping in mind that the community and the board are only approving the expense-based budget though. They're not approving the revenue, they're not approving the levy. The board sets the levy in October of the following year. So, while we state what our goal is, and we do tend to stick to that goal, it's important to note that what is being adopted is the actual expenditure portion of the budget. So from this, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see, salaries are over 50% of our budget. Our benefits, 20%, 75% of our costs are due to our staff, to the people that are teaching our children, all the support staff, the custodial staff that are keeping everything safe in our programs. Transportation is just about 3.5%. Our debt is 6% of the budget, and then BOCES is 5.5%. BOCES is compiled of many things. They provide professional development. We have students that attend BOCES programs. A lot of software products that we use that all come from the BOCES. So we do have a lot of expenditures in that line in order, though, to have a cost savings measure and shared service agreements. So the salaries, what are they? Right now, our Teachers Association contract has expired as of June 2019. We're currently in the process of negotiating with them. The budget right now at this time is only accounting for step and longevity movement. We're hopeful to have a settled contract soon so that we can finalize what the budget should be next year. Our Teamsters, which is our custodial B&G crew, they are expiring at the end of this school year. We just began negotiations with them. At this time, our budget is projecting all current staffing. We are looking at adding another kindergarten section based on the anticipated enrollment and some preliminary information we're receiving. And any other staffing additions or reductions, whether it be in support staff, teaching staff, our paraprofessionals, wherever it might be, that's being reviewed by the team now, and we'll present that in March 11th when we have firm numbers on enrollment, class selections, and hopefully a little bit more information as to where our contracts are going.
What do we have for kindergarten numbers now? What do we know for people coming in next year?
We have two different counts. One says 107, one says 110. The long-range planning study is on the high side, 110, and BOCES, no, that's the
census.
Long-range planning says 107, and the census data says 110. So
And
we're in that range.
this year's kindergarten is
We're at 90.
It's up a little bit more. Tell me what the numbers are right now.
We're in the
We did get
90s.
a
We got
couple
some
of other
beds.
kids in the last couple of weeks.
Like 95.
95.
It's
With 4 sections, so
Yeah.
we are anticipating that to have section. Employee benefits are made up of various costs. The teacher's retirement system, that's all certified individuals within the district. The contribution rate we've been told, should be 9.53%. That is a rate increase year over year of 0.67%. The employee retirement, that's all the support staff that gets paid into that one. That is to be 16%, which is a 0.03% increase. So that is some good news. We're not seeing significant increases in those numbers. Health plan premiums continue to be unpredictable. We only know 6 months at a time for a budget cycle because it's on a calendar year. So right now we know what July through December is next year. We don't know the following 6 months. So we have to estimate that out. This year we did see a decline for the first time in a long time of those rates. It went down an aggregate of 1.62%. However, the Medicare premium, which we reimburse to retirees, went up 6.7%. So where last year the Medicare costs went down and the actives went up, we did sort of inverse this year. So what we're projecting at this point in time is about 7%. It's been very typical to project anywhere 10, 13% in this because the rates would go up in years past, sometimes almost 20%. But seeing in the past few years that they're not going up well above 10, we're comfortable with doing a 7% projection right now for that last 6 months of the year. And our dental and vision premiums are remaining constant. Luckily, we haven't had to have a rate increase in those two areas. So transportation, as you know, we contract with Alworth Bus Company. We have a contract through 21-22 school year with them, and then we will have to decide if we want to RFP it again or extend that contract. We're also looking at some cost savings in this area through shared service agreements with the Riverhead School District. They have a very large fleet and a successful fleet that they run over there. And what we're looking at is our private schools, our charter schools, maybe some special education programs that we're running to see if they can maybe bus our children. If they're passing by us anyway and have empty seats, they want to run a full bus because it helps them, and we're looking for cost-saving measures. So we've already entered into a few of these agreements this current school year, saving significant money, and we're evaluating the cost for next year. We're evaluating the cost versus some troubles we may see. So if they are transporting our children to some of the private parochials, should they have a snow day and a closing, those children wouldn't have transportation. So we're kind of ironing out those details. We're in the process of conversation with them in those situations to say, hey, what would happen? We don't want to have our children who are attending OLQA or Leonard E. Burkett not be able to go to school as a result of, depending on what our cost savings would be because the Riverhead isn't running their buses. So we're in conversation with them. It's an active conversation to try to finalize this and see if this is a viable source of savings for the district. So another section is interfund transfers. We do these often. We have some of them that are just very typical, such as transfer and special aid. We have to budget for that. It's 20% cost of the summer programs for our special education students. The state pays 80% of that cost. The general fund has to pay 20% of that cost. Any students that go to a special act school are paid for the state. The state pays them directly, but we do have to pay what's called a basic contribution, and that number is given to us by the state each year when we get our state aid ones out. Transfer to capital, that's called the $100,000 project. It's different from a capital reserve. What we have been talking about in some goal setting and facilities committee is, do we do a $100,000 project? And what that is you create a budget and you are going to do a project that has to be less than $100,000, and the project has to be completed by June 30th of that year. Once you get that in your budget, you do the work, you file it with the state, you'll get state aid on that in the following year. So then you start getting into a pattern where you're getting your aid in the next year and doing another project. So it starts to flow. The hardest part with these is getting that $100,000 in the budget the first time. In my past district, I had it in my budget every single time, and it was the first thing to get cut because we don't want to cut program. So again, this is something that we're looking to include in the budget next year. It is something we are looking at to see if we could keep it flowing.
But that's something that if you did take from an unassigned reserve fund, you're effectively getting the money back, right, in a year.
In the next year,
so if you said, hey, we're going to
67%
burn our bank account by $100,000 to increase the budget by that 100, so we can spend. It's a one-time thing,
it's a one-time
as opposed to. Okay.
And you get that 67% back on that?
In the next year, yep.
That I get my mind around, like to say the bank debt's going to go down a little bit if you have to wait
to bring it back
up.
And if we could do that, I mean, there is talk from the state that it's likely going to go up to 250 this year.
Right.
That's what the feeling is, and if that happens, we can kind of try to inch up to that.
If you had those projects to do, yeah, that makes sense.
So you would come up, the facilities committee would come up with a wish list and kind of all that.
Correct, right. So we already have some lists compiled of work that has to get done, and we would kind of chip away at those lower cost projects that have to get done in each year. And the goal, what happens with these, because sometimes you never know facilities planning when they're going to approve your projects. Once the board says yes and puts it in the budget and we adopt a budget with it in, we can start submitting the work to SCD. And as soon as we have an approved budget by the community, we call them the next day and say, okay, we're going. They've already began their preliminary reviews and they'll just have it holding and they'll start getting it finalized so we have a work permit in our hand July 1 so that we are guaranteed to get that work done by June 30th. Because there was some point in time where districts were not able to complete the work. Just based on the backlog in SED, and then at that time bidding it out and trying to get contractors in over the summer. So what they're telling us now is when you know you're budgeting for it, your community hasn't yet approved it, but you're budgeting for it, start sending us your paperwork, we'll start looking at it, call us a day after you vote and tell us that your community approved it, and we'll finalize the paperwork to give you a permit to go on July 1. So transfer of school lunch. This is new to this district. It's not been a line item in the past. We did do it this current school year, and this is essentially bad debt in the district in the lunch program. So anybody that is purchasing lunch or receiving lunch and not paying for it, as per new regulations, board policy, the no shaming policy, we feed every child, no matter what, no questions asked, whether they have money or not, whether they're on a free lunch program or not, every child receives a lunch. So at times, some children do tend to draw up some debt within that program. We are doing our best to collect that debt. We have put various procedures in place to try to get all that money back into the program. The law clearly states the lunch program cannot pay for bad debt at the end of the school year. They cannot have any bad debt on their books, so there should be no receivables on the lunch program. The lunch program is separate and apart from the general fund, from the taxpayers. They don't pay for anything in that program. It is self-funding. They have fund balance. They actually have too much fund balance. but they can't take on that small amount of debt. So we actually have to transfer that money back over to the general fund, and essentially what happens is the taxpayers are paying for that debt. We then, in the following year, flip it back over so that we can continue to try to collect on it. We write it off on the books for the financials purposes, but we don't write it off in the system. So as children move through the system, they're either continuing to accumulate or hopefully will start paying down that debt with some payment plans that we're offering. So it is a small amount. The write-off last year was about $8,000. We're trying to contain that and hoping that at the end of the year, we will get it lower than that. The other one on there is transfer to repair reserve, which has been in the budget year after year in this district. It's $50,000 going into the repair reserve that was established a few years back. And that reserve is used for just that, for repair items that are not regular maintenance items. It's not for capital construction. There's no aid received on these projects that we're doing. If you recall, earlier this school year, we did the high school gym using the repair reserve. It was dilapidated and potentially could have caused a safety issue. So as a board, facilities committee recommended, as a board, they decided to go ahead and use the repair reserve to pay for that, the new gym floor up at the high school. So going on now, we did last year, we did next year, now let's go looking 4 years out. Some projections that we're working on in the next 5 years. This is your estimated future tax levies. It's estimated, which is what we have to remember. The assumption is this, tax-based growth factor remains at the 0.36. We're hopeful it doesn't. We do hope to see an upswing at some point with that again. The other assumption is that CPI, or the allowable growth factor, which is 1.81 this year, goes back up to the 2% in the years out. Those are things that are out of our control and very unpredictable. So what you can see in this spreadsheet is showing you what we're looking at in the next 5 years. And you can see that there is some variation where last year our levy maximum was 3.8. The board chose to go to 2.9. This year we're looking at potentially 1.65. Next year it's decreasing 1.46. The year after 1.27. But then it comes back up again to 2%. And that decrease, primarily to what was mentioned before, is due to capital debt and building aid. As debt falls off your books and you start losing building aid, you start losing that exclusion. And that by losing those exclusions, your numbers are going to go up and down. So the goal is to stabilize that with continuous debt and continuous building aid. You always want to off-balance that in order to steady out your tax gap. Some districts never had debt on their books before. They brought it up and passed the capital bond. They started seeing 13% tax levy caps. As a result of never having the exclusion up top, putting it in on the bottom, it was causing major swings in their tax levy. So the goal is to stabilize this, which is why Facilities Committee is, talking about various projects that need to be done. You'll start hearing us talk more and more about a capital reserve program and maybe doing a bond in the near future in order to kind of steady out on levy. As I said before, over 50% of our revenue is coming from this source. So you can see where this year it's just under 400,000, next year it's 354,000. So that is going down, which as our expenditures are going up. So there's an imbalance there. In 21-22, debt falls off. However, we do anticipate the energy performance contract coming on the books. So that is taken into account on here. We will be borrowing for that as well as receiving building aid on that. Which brings me to our next part of that, where we're hopeful to get a little bit additional revenue out of the energy performance contract. So the board approved in October the contract itself. We awarded the vendor Johnson Controls. They've been in a few times to present. The presentations are up on the website if anybody wants to take a look. And they're in the process right now of preparing the paperwork to get up to SED so that in the fall we can start doing some of this work. Then our goal is to have the building aid flowing to offset the payments, and we're going to start seeing reductions in energy costs as well as a result of this. The whole point of an energy performance contract is there's no impact to the taxpayers. Between the building aid that we're going to get and the energy savings, it pays for itself. What we are looking to do as a result of trying to maximize our dollar is get an additional 10% of aid. We can do that by having the voters approve the project. So like I said, the board has already approved it, and we're moving forward and getting the minimum building aid of 67%. However, if the community approves it in May, we'll get an additional 10%. So that's just revenue above and beyond the already anticipated savings. And that would only happen if we have an affirmative community vote.
We talked as a board about really communicating that well, that 10%, the additional 10%, and this, and I don't know what you thought about, we talked about maybe using syntax or somebody else to put together presentations, get them out. I just don't want to lose that in the next 3 weeks, whatever. Because it's huge. I mean, there's no reason that anybody would say no to it, and it's just leaving money on the table.
Our intention is to be very proactive in the community with the budget presentations and include presentations around that so that we get the word out and everybody needs to clearly understand it.
Yeah, because it's complicated, but I think if they understand it, it's almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree.
What was the net amount of that 10%?
600,000.
Definitely don't want to leave that.
No.
So this is just a slide depicting the history, the actual expenditures versus actual revenues going 5 years back. It's red, but it looks orange on the screen right now. That's the expenditure bar, and the blue being the revenue. So you can see we do have some fluctuations where our actual expenditures outpace our actual revenues. This kind of depicts it a little bit differently, showing you where the surplus deficits have occurred, keeping in mind that while it's a surplus deficit on actual, because we always had applied fund balance going out, the district always met 4%. So the 4% funded, the 4% undesignated reserve was always met, and the applied fund balance was always met due to savings. But because we're applying fund balance, that's not actual cash coming in and revenues coming in. So while we have a budget of 44 million, our revenue anticipated is actually at 43 million because we're using some of our savings to potentially pay for some of the costs that we're anticipating. But the goal is always to underspend those expenditures from what the approved budget is, and the district has successfully done that over the past many years, and that's anywhere from 95 to 97% underspent in the budget, which is what, you know, the controller usually likes to see, that you're around 97% spending of your budget, which means your budget is accurate as well as can be predictive. You know, we always have to make sure we have contingencies in there for some nuances which we're experiencing this year. So going forward, we did a little bit of a long-range plan, and you can see the trend is continuing, that we are going to see some expenditures outpacing our revenues, and that's due to the decline in the tax levy as well as on our tuition numbers. Not knowing what they are in the future, we're kind of basing those off where they've been in the past. Some assumptions on this is going to the maximum tax cap in all those years out, and that's based off of that previous slide. We looked at the trends for the past 5 years to kind of determine and estimate where we're going to go next couple of years. And we also are assuming a state aid increase of 2%. That's typically where we see our aid coming in at, is just about 2%. So why are we looking at this? What do we do with this information? It's helping us make some decisions for the next school year. It's helping us make some decisions in this current school year with where we stand. Our goal is to prevent any significant increases or decreases to the budget. We really want to stay stable and have, you know, some fiscal oversight over everything that we're doing. We're here to educate our children, but we're also running a business, and we need to make sure that business remains solvent. So, you know, we're looking at ways to maximize our revenue, any tuition opportunities that we could grab, set our tax levies at the allowable caps, and just continue our advocacy for state aid to be equitable to our district as in relation to those that have similar numbers as us. So we've already had 2 budget work sessions, this being the second. March 11th is our next one, where we will get into a little bit more nitty-gritty of the expenditure side, our enrollment projections, some staffing information, as well as just another general overview. We're hoping to have updates for some of the unknowns we have right now. We should have most of that solidified in March. April 15th is when the board is to adopt the budget and the property tax report card at that time. May 6th is a budget hearing, and then the annual vote is on May 19th. There is a board meeting that occurs between the 11th and March 11th and April 15th, and if necessary, we will do another budget workshop at that time based on the information and where we are after March 11th. Questions from the board?
Thank you, Karen. A lot of stuff to process.
There's a lot to
Okay, that brings us to minutes for adoption. Motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of January 29, 2020. Motion second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education accepts the treasurer's report for the month of December 2019.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Yes, motion carries unanimously.
Discussion, I had sent some notes around kind of walking through the divergence. I don't know if you were able to work those through. So I wasn't looking at the month to month because I think your notes are that there were some differences, but if you look at the year to year on the expense side, it seems like we're like 1.5 million in greater expense through December than we were last year through December. So I don't know if you can walk us through that.
So this is a cash basis, real-time cash basis as of December 31st. Important to note, in last year at that time, we were down a staff member. In fact, the staff member that processes accounts payable due to illness on extended leave at that point in time. So we did not hire a temp to backfill the position. We cross-trained our current staff, and they were filling in and getting, essential bills paid, health insurance, the utilities, and trying to get all that flowing through. So bills were not paid probably as promptly as we should be paying them in that past year. We did experience a little bit of that as well this year in the earlier part of the year. However, all my staff is back in healthy, thankfully. And we are now caught up with all of our bills to make sure that we have all those payments flowing in the right manner. Any line in particular?
Well, that's not salaries though, right? So salaries, we paid over 600 or 500, I can't do the math, 550,000 more this year than last year. The note says buyback was in December, not November, but that should just affect the month to month.
Correct.
So what's the year? What's that $600,000 more in salaries?
Contractual increases.
So that's 600,000 in contractual increases for half of the year more. So at the end of the year, that's 1.2 more. That's what we expect. Okay. And then the rest of these kind of material differences, you're like, so for example, BOCES, 150 or 60,000.
BOCES in the past was paid different. The bill was not paid as presented from BOCES, which is a typical practice. You pay it as it's presented, and then if you have discrepancies, you notify BOCES, work it through with them, and they make the adjustment on the following bill. It was not done in years past here. We've changed that practice so that we pay the bill as presented, which a large portion of that is the special education cost. BOCES bills an estimated amount in September. In years past, it was not paid until the reconciled rate came in, which comes in this month in February. I just received it today. We've done away with that practice. We paid the bill as presented, and we're now receiving about a $150,000 credit on February's bill to offset that.
So this gets offset in February, okay. And then what about the benefits numbers? That's still under, it's like $400,000. It's almost 10% higher in benefits. Is that?
That's contractual increases, TRS, ERS, all those are just regular contractual increases.
Expected increases, okay. All right, thanks.
Be it resolved, motion to approve the consent agenda. Asterisk, agenda items are consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are approved by a single vote unless they are removed from the consent item prior to the vote.
Motion.
Motion.
Second. All in favor? Yes. Motion carries unanimously.
Be it resolved that upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the third reading and adoption of the following policies as presented to the board at this meeting.
Motion. Motion. Second. All in favor? Yes. Motion carries unanimously. We did move this up to the beginning of the agenda, but some of you may have been in the hallway. So if you have any questions or comments. No? Thank you for sitting with us patiently. That was a lot of information.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was about the agenda.
No. At the end, it's about anything.
My name is Dormery Lanzetta. I have some questions and a great deal of concerns about the Ivy Program Diploma. We had a meeting last week that did not answer most of the questions that some of the community members had, and in fact, a lot of us were told that we were not allowed to ask any more questions. We had to go directly to the coordinator. I have personally spoken to Dr. Trace, and my questions are growing based on my conversation with her personally. There have been several assemblies that the students have been provided. I'm talking specifically about the current 10th graders. They are the students who will be launching this program next year. And there's a great deal of stress and frustration that these students are feeling regarding their schedules for next year. And I'm just wondering how we're going to go about answering a lot of these questions. I know there was, I have a great deal, and how do I go about getting these answers?
Okay, so thank you. I appreciate that. Certainly, we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable moving forward. This is an endeavor that we've been working on for 5 years. As a district, I mean, I may be new to the district, but it's clear that we've been gone through significant training and many visitations to see how this can work in other places. If that was not clearly articulated in that initial meeting, then we need to do a little bit better, and I understand that. Our intention for that meeting, again, timing is something that was not necessarily on our side. And what I mean by that was our authorization visits came in December for the high school, and we were pretty certain we were going to go. We were going to have our authorization for next year, but you can never take anything for granted. After we had a very successful visit, and we got not necessarily the total green light, we feel very confident that within the next month or so we will receive that authorization. So we didn't feel comfortable necessarily coming out earlier in the year and making an informational presentation. However, once we felt as confident as we do now, we thought it was appropriate to make that informational presentation. And our intention was to get the information out there, gather feedback, and then have more Q&A type sessions with parents so that more of that dialogue can happen and people can, clearly understand what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we can overcome some of the questions that you have, so that everybody feels comfortable. As a superintendent coming in, one of the reasons that I really was excited about coming here was because of the International Baccalaureate and bringing more opportunities to kids. When I came in, I asked 2 questions, and the first question I asked was, where little place can this happen? Can this work? And the answer to that was yes. And the second question was, will we take opportunity away from kids? And the answer to that was no. And so with that being said, as a philosophical framework, I said that I really can get behind this, and I want to do something that is going to open up opportunity for kids. So if that was not, if the way in which we're going about doing it was not clearly articulated to you, it's our intention in the coming weeks to make sure that that is very clear, and that everybody understands all of the intricacies of how we make this happen.
Okay, because based on our website and going over the course curriculum guide as well as the IB program link, it is not showing that there will be advantages to our current students, and that's where their frustration is coming from.
And again, I think the messaging, maybe we need to look at the messaging, maybe we need to put out an FAQ or something like that, so that some of the questions that we're currently gathering through our survey, we can address so that parents can see that in writing, and if not, that's where that two-way dialogue we need to open up and make sure everybody can be there for that. So I mean, I absolutely 100% appreciate where you're coming from, but if you can just give us a little bit of patience in the coming weeks, I think we can answer a lot of those questions when we've got the experts in the room that can speak directly.
So the only way our questions will be answered is if we complete the survey?
No. We want to gather information so that we can, have thoughtful responses. I think what happens sometimes is, if you're in the room and you ask questions, I don't want to look at you and say, Ms. Lanzetta, I appreciate that, but let me get back to you on Monday because I just need to look into that. So the more questions we have up front, the better we can do in terms of, asking those doing the research on that and coming with real good answers for you. It's as simple as that, really. It's not a matter of, we're not going to answer questions in our survey at all. It is a two-way dialogue, and we want to hear from the community and understand what the obstacles or the perceptions are in the community. Absolutely. Pardon? I'm not sure.
Her questions, can she send them to you?
Oh, absolutely,
Well, we
yeah.
can put them on the FAQ?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, and then there's
Yeah.
gonna be
Correct. And, right now, we have a curriculum committee meeting on the 24th, Monday the 24th, where we're scheduled to have further this conversation. We're going to be publicizing that a bit more, and then at least one other night where, whatever we need to do to get the message out. We certainly want to make sure the community and parents, the children, everybody's very comfortable moving forward.
Will you put out the date and time for the?
Absolutely, yeah, that's what I just said. We're going to advertise that so everybody understands when and where and all that.
You mean to the curriculum
For the
committee?
curriculum committee, yeah.
Yeah, those are already out, but we will publicize it very specifically that it's an idea of, information on that too.
But the public can attend and listen.
Absolutely,
to the meeting.
yeah, of course.
Right.
100%.
So that people know that that's what's going to be discussed at that meeting. So if they have questions, perhaps they'll be answered by listening.
Yeah, we want everybody that has questions to be there, absolutely. Thank you.
And I just have one other question I've asked a couple times. As part of the discussion, can we get what the course curriculum is going to look like for 21-22 in addition to what's been posted for 20-21 for next year? Because that's going to affect how some of the students make decisions for the courses they're taking next year. So obviously Ivy is by and large a 2-year program, so everything doesn't happen in a bubble. So for kids who are making a determination next year between whether they're going to say take pre-calculus and then go into AP calculus or IB Math 1 and IB Math 2, I think they want an assurance that if they go the pre-calculus route, that AP calculus is going to be offered that second year without having a second series.
So, exactly. These are the kinds of questions that we want to be able to either put in the FAQ or be able to respond to in person with everybody, So, yeah, I think we need to be thinking about multi-year planning for what those courses look like. And I think, yeah, so we want to answer all those questions in the next couple of weeks.
Giving this particular group of students a guarantee as to what 2 years of classes are going to look like for them, since the decisions they make for next year will impact directly the classes that follow after that.
Understood.
And that meeting will take place before the course request deadline.
Correct.
And do we have a calendar for when their course selections are going to be due? Is it shifted this year because of the change in the procedure?
Yeah, not off the top of my head, but I think we're, given the circumstances, we're trying to be as flexible as we can to make sure everybody is comfortable.
And are you going to wait until the final green light before you do the course selections for next year?
Yeah, because we usually send out what the student course requests are by the end of March. That's
They
like
have
what
a form. The students
correct,
have
but
to-
then they take the form and then we print out and send home what the students selected to make sure that there were no errors made in that selection process. So that usually occurs end of March, beginning of April typically. So we should have all those, those details done by then. So then you'll be able to see exactly what, it's like a check and balance, make sure that what they requested is actually in eSchool and ready for scheduling.
Because a lot of them don't want to make that selection yet because they don't feel they have all the information. So I don't want them to feel pressured to put this information
Sure,
on this sheet and then be told, it's past the deadline, yeah, you
Absolutely,
can't change it.
and as a counselor, I'm sure even though we say we want them to decide by March 30th of the previous year, the more firm they are in their decision, the earlier, of course, the better we can plan. But they do, we do have a lot of flexibility even with our course selections. So if they do change their minds in, June, we have, if they may not get everything they want if they change their mind, but, we have the students have options to change their mind. And not be stuck.
Unfortunately for me, that has not been my experience. I was asked to have a specific thing changed and I was told it was past the deadline. So I am very concerned about the deadline. Where I work, we don't have this kind of deadline. We make changes up and through. We see parents all summer, all September. So
Yeah, but our counselors do as well.
That is my concern, and they were also told that their schedules would not be finalized until the second, possibly the third week of September. because we're still working out the bugs of this program. That's what the students were told in an assembly.
I
So you
can't
can,
speak for that, but typically our schedules are sent out in August, and those are the final schedules. That scheduling timeline has not changed.
okay, I'm just, again, this is where the frustration and the stresses are coming from to this, I can speak only for my student, that they're getting information at the assembly, and we're not getting confirmation on that information, and that was something that they were told.
Can we commit to a date where we can have a lot more specific information out so that people know, hey, we're going to see it?
I think that's what we're saying.
I'm just asking, like, when is that?
The 24th.
The
We're
24th?
going to have more information that we're going to be able,
I'd like to see it in like a bunch of places, like the website, the district news, wherever, however you guys put it all together. Here's the rollout, here's what it's going to look like for 3 years, or 4 years, or 2 years, whatever the right answer is. Because not everybody's going to come to a curriculum committee meeting, not everybody's going to come to an FAQ. So the 24th is what we're saying?
and ongoing as other.
So that's just one.
The Monday we return from break, right?
So we're going to get,
Yeah.
And then ongoing.
Yeah,
We'll
At
put
least
out
one
a
or two
few
more,
dates
whatever we
and
need.
different
That'll be the
times so
next-
people can go
We're going to
and
continue.
it's convenient for them.
Yeah, it won't be.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for attending tonight. The next Board of Ed meeting is March 11th at 7:30 here in the district office. Motion to adjourn into executive session for purposes of collective negotiations under the federal law, the CMTA, and other matters, the disclosure of which would result in an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Motion? Second. All in favor? Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.